How the Palestine Mandate ended. The Palestine Mandate, or the British League of Nations Mandate for Palestine, was an interwar government for what is now Israel and Palestine. World War II and its immediate aftermath would lead to the end of the mandate. The solidification of the World War II allies, aka the United Nations, into the United Nations Organization, the United Nations or the UN, in shorthand, during 1945 led to the last meeting of the League of Nations in 1946, where the League dissolved itself and transferred its authority to the UN. The UN called for accelerated decolonization and assumed the right to reorganize the League of Nations mandates into United Nations trust territories where decolonization was not immediate. Britain could have rejected UN authority over its mandate for Palestine, as South Africa rejected UN authority over the mandate for Southwest Africa. But while Britain retained its interest in securing the Suez Canal, its interest in obtaining refinancing and maintaining its military alliance with the Zionist-sympathizing USA was far greater. Britain would defer to the judgment of the UN regarding the fate of its mandate for Palestine. An aside, the age of colonialism would bring European powers, including Britain, into the Americas and West Africa. Yet the spices and other fine goods of India, the East Indies and China remained as a powerful inspiration for colonial enterprise. India would be the crown jewel of the British Empire, but also a base from which power would be projected east towards the riches of the East Indies and China and westward against the opposition to British power. An important example of expanding British power westward from India was the English-Portuguese rivalry over the Persian Gulf. The Portuguese in 1622, subject to the Habsburgs and therefore outside their usual alliance with England, were expelled from the Persian Gulf by a joint English and Iranian force. While the English and later the British had a strong presence along Asia's southern coast, they also had interests in Egypt, a province of the Ottoman Empire. Britain's influence over the Ottoman Empire, trading manufactured products for Ottoman agricultural surplus, became of great importance after Britain saved the Ottomans from Napoleon's move towards British interests. But if the Ottomans were great for Britain, the British found that encouraging the Muhammad Ali dynasty to strengthen its hold over Egypt at the expense of their nominal Ottoman overlords was even better for Britain. The alliance between Britain and Egypt's Muhammad Ali dynasty led to loans which lead to debts that Egypt was unable to pay Britain. Britain then took the rights to build a canal across the Suez Isthmus in lieu of a debt repayment. This Suez Canal, in combination with the already existing Mediterranean Sea, allowed ships departing Britain to enjoy a shortcut to British interests along Asia's southern coast. This created a new interest among Britain's set of national interests. Access to a broad range of British colonies from the Persian Gulf to the Pacific Island colonies was much easier through the Suez Canal as opposed to a sailing ship around the continent of Africa. If Britain could control Palestine, a region to the east of Suez and the island of Cyprus to the north of Suez, then Suez, the key to much of the empire, would be much better secured. This aspiration by British policymakers was achieved by the acquisition of the mandate for Palestine in the aftermath of World War I. As for Palestine, the next objective would be to stay. Pitching themselves as the patrons of Zionism would win sympathy from both among Jews and Gentiles. On the other hand, if the Yishuv Jewish community in Palestine established by the Zionists was independent and strong enough to be the sovereign nation of its dreams, then British power would be diminished, or even worse, if the Yishuv did not maintain its alliance with the British. Far better, then, for Britain to keep both the Arabs and the Yishuv from dominating the other party. Then the British Navy could guard the Suez Canal from the ports of Palestine forever. In the UN, decision-making for the mandate for Palestine was decided from February 1947, when Britain announced it would terminate the mandate on the terms of the UN, to November 1947, when the UN decided that Palestine was to be partitioned. Yet Britain played a double game. On the one hand, the decision was the UN's. On the other hand, British aid to the Arab kingdoms would force their Zionist opponents to employ Britain as an intermediary, if the war went badly. Unfortunately for the British Empire, Zionist military efficiency was high, shocking even the Zionists themselves. The decision in the UN would be determined by the US-led and USSR-led blocs, both of whom favored Zionism. In the US, the mystique of the Bible and the desire to divert further Jewish immigration led to support for Zionism at the political level, culminating in the recognition of the State of Israel. The professional civil servants of the Department of State preferred to cultivate ties with the Arab kingdoms, and so the U.S. had an arms embargo on both sides as the Arab armies were armed, and in the case of Jordan, officered by the British. In the USSR, Zionism was condemned by communism for seducing Jewish workers away from the camp of proletarian internationalism on behalf of international finance capitalism. While the communists opposed Zionism both before and after Israel's War of Independence, during that war they supported Zionism. Zionism was at war with the UK-aligned Arab kingdoms. Labor Zionism, the main Zionist movement, was socialist. The Soviet satellite state of Czechoslovakia would be Israel's main supplier of arms. The souring of the brief communist-Zionist honeymoon would begin ironically because the embrace was all too close. When Israeli emissary Golda Meir visited Moscow, Stalin felt threatened by Jewish enthusiasm for his own policy. Rather than wait to be mobilized by the party, Soviet Jewry made a genuine spontaneous demonstration in favor of Israel. An independent sense of initiative, even in support of party policy, was seen as breaking free of party control and therefore as a threat. Then in 1950, Israel's Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion worked as the leader of Mapai, a main party of labor Zionism, against Mapam, the other main party of labor Zionism. Mapai wanted labor Zionism to ally itself with Zionists in favor of capitalism. Mapam wanted Israel to be fully socialist. Mapai wanted Israel to align itself with France to take advantage of its hegemony over the Mediterranean. Mapam wanted Israel to align itself with the USSR as part of a commitment to communism. Finally, Stalin feared his doctors as Zionist poisoners. While he would soon die and then soon after that, the doctors were absolved to avoid tainting the Soviet elite by association, Zionism would never be rehabilitated in the politics of the Soviet Communist Party. The end of the British mandate for Palestine would accordingly occur as the UK retreated and the US and the USSR rallied the UN in favor of the creation of a Jewish state.